Hi there, my name is John Stevens, pastor of Zion Lutheran Church in Oregon City, Oregon, and we are part of the ELCA, and welcome to Dollar Store Children's Sermons, where we take a look at the lectionary text. We tie them to an item from the Dollar Tree, or the junk drawer, or the kids' room, or the garage. You know, we've been doing it. Thank you so much for your partnership in this ministry and the love that you are sharing with your kids and your congregations and your families. You are rocking it, my friends. Thank you so much. This is for the narrative lectionary, and I need to remember to say it before I get to the end of the video. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, would you please do that? If you haven't followed the Facebook group, please do that. It helps in all the algorithms and all of that. I'm looking at starting a project later in the year and getting more of a picture of the wide breadth that that the Dollar Store Children's Sermons reaches. And I'm so appreciative of all of your watching and comments and all of that. It just warms my heart. I put everything in that rainy day folder, where it's like when you have those days where you're like, why am I doing this? Not this. This is like one of those things where, but why am I doing ministry? Why am I doing that? And I put that in there because those are the days where you pull it up and you go, okay, all right, we're doing this, and this is good. So thank you so much. All right. Now on to the springboard. So this is for, like I said, the narrative lectionary, and we've moved into part of Acts, and then also First Thessalonians, Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, the church in Thessalonica. And so the springboard I'm looking at, especially the Acts text gets, you can change some of the terms to the Jewish authorities and things like that, but it's a hard one for a children's sermon, because, I mean, it's a great one for Bible study and to do a deep dive in what's going on and all of that. But for the children's sermon, for this first sermon, or I've been calling it the Sermon on the Steps. So first sermon and the big sermon, I don't know, all those terms that we use to define things. But so the springboard, my squirrels are going around, you can tell that. The springboard for this one is a piece of paper and a pen, or a letter that I've received, or my phone with an email program that I'm going to write an email to somebody using that as a form of a letter. And the idea is to talk about that Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, which we call First Thessalonians, and then we have Second Thessalonians, where we wonder if it's another letter attributed to Paul. But so it's a way of starting the conversation with our kids about what are some of these books in our Bible. And the First Thessalonians, to talk about, Paul was writing a community. Paul was writing a church that when we open it up and we read that, we're reading a letter that Paul wrote, sent it to the church in Thessalonica. And so it'd be like if you had a letter that someone wrote, perhaps your congregation celebrated or is planning on celebrating some type of anniversary, like it's the 100th anniversary, or it's the 25th anniversary, or it's the 150th anniversary, or you did this a little while ago and you have a booklet. And sometimes what they'll do is they'll have former pastors pen a letter, write a letter, like pen a letter, put a little, take the fountain pen or the quill and ink, and write a letter. But they write a letter to the congregation, and many times it's word of thanks, many times it's a memory, things like that. So when we can talk about, like, I'm going to write a letter to my grandmother, or I'm going to write a letter to my kid, I'm going to write a letter, and then what are some of the things that you would put in there? And you can talk about in Paul's letter to the Thessalonians. You could even start with the very beginning of Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, when it's like when Paul gives thanks for people, gives thanks for the saints of God, and all of that. But the idea is just a way, let me take that out. The word just kind of minimizes things. It is one way where we can start to open up the scriptures and show the kids what are, this book, this letter to the Thessalonians, it was written in a time and a place, and it was talking to particular people, and it just it's like breathes new life into the book. So that's the springboard I'm using on this. It's more of a teaching children's sermon. So it's like, or what if you did this? Where you take this, instead of you talking about writing a letter, you've got a huge piece of butcher paper. You've got this big, roll out this big piece of paper. It could be a brown craft big paper like that. And then you could write on there, let's say Zion. Dear Zion. And then you go talk to the kids. What are some of the things we want to tell the church? What are some of the things that we would like to give thanks for, the things we want to make sure that they do? How could we talk about how can they show God's love in the world? And so you write a huge letter, and it could just be a couple of words, but the idea that is again kind of cracking open the scriptures and being able to see that this book that we call First Thessalonians is a letter written to the church in Thessalonica. I like saying that word because it's one of the words you can roll off the tongue, but sometimes you're like, huh? But all right, a couple of springboards, but they're all about talking about Paul writing to this church and expressing concerns and expressing love and all of that. On a side note, Paul's letter to the Thessalonians is thought to be the earliest writings we have found in the New Testament because of the theological points that he makes. People think that people think Christ is coming back the very next day, and so they're addressing some of that. But I mean, it's thought to predate the Gospels, so that's pretty cool. So, all right, lots of the letters predate the Gospels, but First Thessalonians, Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, let me get my apostrophes in the right places, is thought to be one of the earliest, if not the earliest, writings that we have in the New Testament. So I just find that fascinating. All right. Have a great day. Thank you so much for the love that you're sharing with your kids and your congregations and your families. You are rocking it, my friends. See you next week. Peace.